Welcome back to the deep dive. It is February 23rd, 2026. And I want to start today by asking you, the listener, a pretty simple question about your desktop right now.
Yeah.
Like, if I were to walk over and look at your browser tabs in your terminal windows, what exactly would I see?
Oh, I mean, if it's anything like mine, chaos. Just absolute chaos.
Right, exactly. You probably have, a tab open for ChatGPT to help draft an email. You might have Gemini 2.5 Pro open in some other window because it's just better at creative writing right now.
Yeah, and then you've got your code editor open,
Yep,
and maybe you're trying to use Claude Code in there because it's the absolute best at Python.
totally. And on top of all that, you probably have a command line tool running for Quinn because you want to try out that new open source model.
It's the classic too much of a good thing problem, really. We're living in this golden age of AI. We have access to all this incredible intelligence. GPT-5, Gemini, Claude, iFlow, but they're all scattered and they just live in these separate silos.
Right. It's a total fragmentation nightmare. You have the engine, right? The
Yeah.
intelligence. But you can't always put it in the car you want to drive. You have a subscription for one.
An API key for another.
Exactly. And a CLI tool for a third.
Yeah.
And none of them talk to each other.
It's like having 5 different streaming services, but you literally need a different television set for each one. It's inefficient. And frankly, for developers, it's a massive headache. You end up spending more time managing your access than actually building things.
Well, that is exactly the headache we are going to cure today. We are doing a deep dive into a project on GitHub that I honestly think is going to change how we all interact with these models. It's called CLIProxyAPI, and it's built by a user named Ryder for me.
Yeah, I've been digging into this repository all morning, just reading through the documentation, checking the issue tracker, looking at the actual code structure. And what's really fascinating here is that this isn't just some quick utility script.
Nine.
It feels like a fundamental piece of infrastructure that was just completely missing from the AI stack.
Yeah.
It is essentially a universal adapter.
A universal adapter. I love that analogy. So the mission of this deep dive isn't just to talk about a piece of code. It's to talk about a fundamental shift. We are moving from a world of command line interfaces, the CLIs, to a world of universal application programming interfaces, APIs. But before we get too technical into the weeds, let's just set the stage. What exactly is this tool doing under the hood?
So to really understand CLI Proxy API, you have to understand the problem with the plug. Imagine you're traveling overseas. You have your hairdryer, which has a very specific shape of plug on it. Let's call that the command line interface, or CLI. But the hotel room wall has a completely different shape of socket. That socket is the API.
Okay, so my hair dryer works perfectly fine. The electricity is right there in the wall. But physically, I just can't connect them.
Precisely. Many of the most powerful AI models right now, specifically things like Gemini 2.5 Pro or the new Quinn Code, they offer incredible power via a CLI tool. You type a command in your terminal, and it gives you text back. That is your hairdryer. But your actual software, your browser extensions, your code editors, your automated agents, they all expect an API.
Right.
They expect a standard web request, usually formatted the way OpenAI or Anthropic does it.
So they are literally speaking two completely different languages. The terminal speaks text stream, and the app speaks JSON objects.
Exactly. So what Router for Me has built here is the travel adapter. CLI Proxy API sits right in the middle. It reps those distinct, honestly sometimes clunky CLIs for Gemini, GPT-5 via the ChatGPT codex, Claude Code, Quinn, iFlow, even Antigravity, and it exposes them as a standard, fully compatible API service.
So to my code editor, it just looks like it's talking to the standard OpenAI API. It sends a request and it gets a response. It has absolutely no idea that in the background, this proxy is frantically typing commands into a hidden terminal window to get the answer.
That is exactly what is happening. It is a translation layer. It completely masquerades as a standard server. But the implications of this are massive, especially when we start talking about the cost.
Well, we definitely need to talk about the cost, because I saw a line in the GitHub README that made me stop scrolling immediately.
Yeah.
It explicitly said, allowing you to enjoy the free Gemini 2.5 Pro through API.
Yeah, that is the aha moment for most developers. Typically, if you want to use a model like Gemini via an API to build an app or power some sort of plugin, you pay per token. It's a metered utility. If you use a lot of it, you pay a lot of money.
And for coding specifically, where you are pasting in these massive files for context, that gets expensive incredibly fast.
Oh, incredibly expensive. But often the CLI access, the command line tool itself, is included in your standard monthly subscription. Or sometimes it's even completely free for developers just to encourage them to adopt the ecosystem.
So by using this proxy,
You are liberating that free or flat rate access from the terminal. You can take that free Gemini 2.5 Pro access and pipe it directly into a tool that normally requires an expensive paid API key. You are essentially arbitraging the interface.
that is so clever. It's like a hack in the very best sense of the word. You're
Yeah.
just getting more value out of the tools you already have legitimate access to. But let's look at the source list again. It's not just Gemini we're talking about here.
No, not at all. It's the big three and then some. It handles GPT-5 via the ChatGPT codex. It handles Claude Code, which is obviously huge right now for developers. It handles Quotio Code and iFlow. It's really trying to be the single doorway for every major model you might ever want to use.
Now, I have to ask, because whenever I hear words like proxies and wrappers and hacks, I immediately get a little nervous about security. If I'm typing my proprietary code into this thing, or if I'm logging into my accounts, where is that data actually going? Is this developer harvesting my credentials?
I had the exact same thought, so that was the very first thing I checked in the documentation. And the design is explicitly localhost only for all of the management endpoints.
Local host only. Can you break that down for the listener who maybe isn't a network engineer?
Yeah, of course. It just means the software runs entirely on your local machine. You are the server. When you configure your accounts, the control panel is only accessible from your own computer. Your data is not being routed through some shady cloud relay owned by the developer. It stays right there on your own hardware.
Okay, that definitely makes me feel better. But what about the login process itself? Usually with these things, you have to go into a developer portal, find secret API key, that super long string of random letters, and paste it into some plain text file. And if you accidentally push that file to GitHub, you're in huge trouble.
Right. That's the old way of doing things. And frankly, it is a huge security risk. One of the coolest things about CLIProxyAPI is that it actually supports OAuth for many of these services, specifically OpenAI Codex, Claude Code, Quotio Code, and iFlow.
Okay, so OAuth is like when you click log in with Google on a website, right?
Exactly. Instead of handling a raw, permanent API key that has infinite power, you authenticate an active session. You just log in normally like a human being in a browser window. The proxy then takes that active session token to do its work. It's so much safer because you don't have a master key just sitting in a text file waiting to be stolen.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And the documentation also mentioned integration with AMP CLI.
Right. So AMP is a massively popular tool set for developers right now. This proxy actually acts as a management layer specifically designed for AMP. So if you are already using AMP's coding tools, you can pull in your Google subscription, your ChatGPT subscription, or your Claude subscription directly into it. It creates this seamless bridge where your authenticated user session just natively powers your entire development environment.
Okay, so we've established that it connects things that didn't connect before. It saves a ton of money. It's secure. But here's where I think the project gets genuinely brilliant. Section 3 of our source outline calls this traffic control. Because this isn't just a dumb pipe-moving text back and forth, is it?
Not at all. It's a very smart traffic cop. This is where the tool goes from being a simple money saver to being an absolute workflow saver. We really have to talk about the load balancing feature.
Load balancing. Now, usually that is something massive enterprise companies worry about for their web servers.
Right.
Why does a regular developer need load balancing for an AI prompt?
Rate limits. Plain and simple. If you are a power user, let's say you're using an automated AI agent to refactor a massive codebase overnight, you are sending hundreds of requests an hour. Eventually, Claude or GPT-5 is going to throw up a wall and say, whoa, slow down. You have hit your cap for the next 3 hours.
The dreaded you have exceeded your current usage message. And then you were just stuck twiddling your thumbs waiting to work again.
Exactly. CLIProxyAPI completely solves this with round-robin load balancing. You can input multiple accounts into the system. Maybe you have a personal account and a dedicated work account. Maybe you and your co-founder share a pool of different accounts. The proxy will automatically cycle through all of them.
Oh, I see. So request 1 uses account A, request 2 uses account B, request 3 goes to account C, and then request 4 loops back to account A.
Correct. It distributes the work automatically across your entire pool. You never have to manually log out of one account and log back into another in your browser. To your software, it just looks like one endless, uninterrupted stream of availability.
That is an absolute game changer for automation. But there was another routing feature in there called model mapping that I thought was even cooler than load balancing.
Oh, I love model mapping. This is entirely about reliability. Let's say you have a Python script that runs every single night to summarize financial news, and you want it to use the absolute smartest, most capable model available. Let's say Claude Opus 4.5.
The absolute Rolls-Royce of models.
Right. But sometimes the Rolls-Royce is in the shop. Maybe the Anthropic API is temporarily down, or maybe your specific account just doesn't have access to Opus at that exact moment. Normally, your script would just crash, it would return a 500 error and completely fail.
Which is incredibly frustrating if you wake up the next morning and realize none of your automated work actually got done.
With model mapping, you can set up explicit fallback rules. You can tell the proxy, look, I want Claude Opus 4.5, but if that is unavailable for any reason, don't fail. Instead, silently switch the request over to Claude Sonnet 4.
So it automatically downgrades to the next best thing just to keep the lights on and the data flowing.
Precisely. It's like ordering the fancy dry-aged steak at a restaurant, and the waiter comes back and says, we're out of the ribeye, but I'll bring you the standard sirloin immediately instead of just kicking you out of the restaurant entirely.
That is a great analogy. It ensures the job gets done. And honestly, for a lot of routine tasks, the sirloin model is perfectly fine anyway.
Exactly. And the user doesn't even need to know the switch happened until they bother to look at the proxy logs later. It just keeps the pipeline moving.
Now I have a technical question. We keep talking about text generation.
Yeah.
But modern AI in 2026 is about way more than just text. Does this proxy handle the advanced stuff?
It does. It supports multimodal input, so you can send images and charts along with your text prompt seamlessly. It supports streaming, so you get that nice typewriter effect where the words appear in your editor as they are generated. And crucially, it supports function calling.
Function calling. That's a term I see thrown around a lot in these repositories. Why is that specific feature so important to maintain?
Function calling is what actually makes an AI into an agent. It's the ability for the AI model to look at a prompt and say, I can't answer this with just my static training data. I need to run a live Google search. Or I need to execute this Python script on the user's machine to find out. The AI outputs a specific command, your computer runs it, and then feeds the result back to the model. Yeah. If CLIProxyAPI didn't support that back and forth, it would break almost every modern AI coding tool on the market. The fact that it preserves function calling perfectly means it's a true full replacement for the standard API.
So it's incredibly robust. It handles all the heavy lifting. But you know what really sold me on the viability of this project? It wasn't even the code itself. It was the ecosystem section down at the bottom of the README.
Yes, the platform effect.
Yes. Usually when you find a clever GitHub tool like this, it's just a script you run in a terminal and that's it. But there are actual polished consumer-facing apps being built on top of CLIProxyAPI. It's literally become a foundation.
That is exactly when you know a tool is solving a real painful problem, when other developers stop seeing it as a neat trick and start treating it as core infrastructure.
Let's run through some of these ecosystem projects because I think they show just how versatile this proxy really is. First up on the list was Vibe Proxy.
Vibe Proxy is fantastic. It's a native macOS app that just sits quietly in your menu bar. Its entire purpose is to let you use your Claude Code and ChatGPT subscriptions for local coding without dealing with any messy terminal setup. It just works right out of the box. It uses CLIProxyAPI as the underlying engine, but it gives you a nice, clean, Apple-style interface.
I'm their subtitle translator. This one felt so incredibly niche, but I bet it's profoundly useful for the people who need it.
This is actually my favorite example of weird utility. It's a browser-based tool. You upload an SRT file, which is just the raw subtitles for a movie or a YouTube video. It pipes that text through your Gemini subscription via the proxy to translate the entire file into another language.
But why Gemini specifically for that? Why not just use Google Translate?
Because Gemini 2.5 Pro has a massive multi-million token context window. You can feed it the script for an entire 2-hour movie all at once. And because it's a large language model, it can do contextual error correction and cultural localization way better than standard sentence-by-sentence Google Translate. The developer of the subtitle tool didn't need to build a complex, custom Gemini integration. They just pointed their web app at the local proxy, and it handled the rest.
That is so cool. And then there's a tool called Quotio.
Quotio directly addresses the rate limit anxiety we were talking about earlier. It's another macOS menu bar app, but this one meticulously tracks your remaining quotas across Claude, Gemini, OpenAI, all of them. But the kicker is it leverages the proxy's smart auto failover. So if you are deep in a coding session and your OpenAI quota suddenly hits 0, Quotio can signal the proxy to switch providers automatically without you dropping a single line of code.
It's basically a fuel gauge for your AI that automatically switches gas tanks the second one runs dry.
That is the perfect description of it, yeah.
And for the Windows users, because we know you're out there listening, there is a project called Proxy Pilot.
Yes, this isn't just an exclusive Mac Club. Proxy Pilot is a Windows native fork of the project. It adds a standard system tray icon and a TUI, which is a text user interface. It looks very matrixy, very hacker. You can actually see your API traffic flowing in real time in this neat little console window.
And finally, we have what the README calls the inspired projects, 9Router and OmniRoute.
These are fascinating evolutions of the core concept. OmniRoute is particularly interesting because it focuses entirely on cost optimization. It markets itself as smart routing to free and low-cost AI models. It intercepts your prompt, analyzes it, and basically asks, does this simple question really need the $20 a month premium model? Or can the free lightweight Flash model handle it just fine?
So just optimizing for your wallet in the background automatically.
Exactly. It really shows that we are seeing a brand new layer of software emerge here. You have the models at the bottom, right? The raw intelligence layer. Then you have the apps at the top, your code editors and your browser extensions. And now you have this thick middleware layer, CLIProxyAPI, that manages all the logistics and economics in between.
And obviously that middleware layer needs to be incredibly fast. Which brings us to the actual technology behind it. I took a look at the repository languages, and it is 99.7% written in Go.
Go, the programming language built by Google.
Yeah, why does that matter? Like, AI is completely dominated by Python. Why not write this in Python? Why not JavaScript?
Python is absolutely great for building and training AI models, but it is notoriously not always the best choice for high-speed networking. Go is famous in the computer science world for something called concurrency. It uses these lightweight threads called Go routines. Imagine a juggler. A Python script is a juggler who can handle maybe 3 or 4 balls at a time before dropping one. Go is a juggler who can handle 10,000 balls at once without even breaking a sweat.
And when you are acting as a proxy, juggling simultaneous requests from 5 different desktop apps to 5 different remote AI providers.
You absolutely need to be that 10,000 ball juggler. You need to keep connections open, wait for remote responses, stream text back to the user chunk by chunk, all simultaneously. Go is literally the perfect tool for that specific job. It's incredibly efficient, it's a compiled language so it runs fast, and it's rock solid stable.
And the developer community clearly agrees with that architecture choice. I mean, 11.4K stars on GitHub, 1.8K forks.
Those are elite numbers. In the open source world, 11,000 stars means you aren't just some weekend hobby project anymore. You are becoming a standard. It means there are thousands of highly technical eyes on the code, finding security bugs, suggesting optimizations, and contributing features.
And it's not just independent volunteers either, right? I was actually really surprised to see actual corporate sponsorships listed right there in the README.
Yeah, that really validates the utility of the tool in a big way. You have Z.AI, who are explicitly promoting their GLM coding plan through it. You have Packy Code and AI Code Mirror, which are commercial API relay services.
Now play devil's advocate for me for a second. Why on earth would a company that sells premium API access sponsor an open source tool whose primary selling point is helping people use free CLI access? Doesn't that directly hurt their business model?
It's all about the funnel. They know that eventually power users will outgrow the free tier. If you build your entire company's workflow around CLIProxyAPI, happily relying on the free CLI tools for months, eventually you are going to need enterprise-grade stability or massive throughput that those free tools simply cannot provide.
And when that day inevitably comes,
When that day comes, you already have the infrastructure in place. You just plug their paid provider credentials into the back of your existing proxy. These sponsors want to be the default trusted choice when you finally decide to open your wallet and upgrade. They are buying mind share in the infrastructure layer. It's actually a very smart long-term play.
and despite all that corporate interest and sponsorship money, the project itself is still released under an MIT license.
The absolute gold standard of open source. It means the code is maximally permissive. You can lose it, you can modify it, you could fork it, you can even build closed-source commercial apps on top of it without paying royalties. It functionally guarantees that this universal adapter won't suddenly pivot and become a walled garden itself.
So let's synthesize all of this for the listener. We have a tool here that fundamentally breaks down the restrictive silos between AI models. It saves us real money by letting us use our existing subscriptions way more effectively. It massively increases reliability with intelligent load balancing and automatic fallbacks. And it creates a unified, stable standard for developers to build an entire ecosystem on.
It honestly checks every single box for a developer working in 2026. It takes what was quickly becoming a fragmented, unmanageable mess and turns it into a quiet, unified background utility.
But I want to zoom out for just a second as we wrap up. We mentioned the phrase model agnosticism earlier in the dive. I feel like that is really the big philosophical takeaway here.
I completely agree. For the last few years, we've all been totally obsessed with the brand names. Are you using GPT-4? Are you using Claude 3? We identified with the model itself. We spent hours learning the specific weird quirks of how to prompt Gemini perfectly versus how to prompt Llama.
But tools like CLIProxyAPI change that entire dynamic.
They absolutely do. When you have a smart router sitting in the middle of your workflow, the specific provider on the other end starts to matter a whole lot less. If I ask my editor a coding question and OmniRoot decides that the free version of Quinn is perfectly capable of answering it, I don't need to know that. I just get the right answer in my editor.
If you have a really complex architectural question, the router just silently sends it to the expensive Opus model.
Exactly. The raw intelligence just becomes a commodity. Think of it like electricity. When you walk into a room and turn on a light switch, you don't care if the specific electron lighting up the bulb came from a wind turbine, a solar panel, or a nuclear plant. You just want the room to light up.
We are moving rapidly toward the pure commoditization of AI generation.
Yes. The interface, the actual app you use to get your work done, that becomes the core product. The intelligence model running in the cloud just becomes an interchangeable battery that you slot into the back of it. And CLIProxyAPI is really the first mainstream tool that gives us, the end users, the power to swap those batteries on the fly without the big tech companies stopping us.
That is such a powerful concept. It puts the control right back in our hands. We aren't locked into OpenAI's walled ecosystem or Google's walled ecosystem. We are building our own local host ecosystem.
It restores sovereignty to the user. You control the routing logic. You hold the authentication keys. You control the costs. In a tech landscape where these massive companies are trying so hard to lock us all into their specific subscriptions, seeing a tool like this take off is just a huge breath of fresh air.
Absolutely. Well, I think that is a perfect place to wrap up today's deep dive. I strongly suspect a few of you listening are already heading over to GitHub to clone that repository right now.
I know, I definitely am. I'm going to set up that subtitle translator workflow this afternoon just to test out the Gemini context window.
And I'm going to finally install Vibe Proxy on my Mac. But before we go, here is a final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over. As these smart routers get better and better, and as the underlying models become completely commoditized, are we rapidly moving toward a future where we stop asking the question, which AI is the best, and instead start asking which router is the smartest?
That is the real question for the next year of tech.
If the middleware software makes all the routing choices for you seamlessly, does the brand name of the model even exist to the user anymore? Or does it all just blur together and become the computer?
Just invisible intelligence.
Something to think about. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Stay curious, everyone.